Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Buns, and today we will be going over all of the skill trees of Amara in Borderlands 3. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you guys, link in the description to my Twitch. I stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday most of the day, and videos Tuesdays and Thursdays. Starting things off with her Mythical Assault tree. You'll see these different shapes on the left and right. These hexagon sort of shapes are her action skills and the alternatives to them. And these kind of arrows are her skill effects that will differentiate each skill from each other. So starting things off, when we do equip slot 1, that will add it down to this first slot here, which is the equip skill, which is Phase Cast. Amara sends forward an astral projection of herself, dealing damage to everything in its path. It is a 28-second cooldown and does 92 damage. Now these are her first 3 passive abilities that you have access to that you can buy. First one being Do Harm, second one being Fast Hands, and third one being Violent Tapestry. Do Harm. Killing an enemy grants Amara a stack of Rush. Activating her action skill consumes all Rush stacks. For every stack of Rush consumed, Amara's action skill damage is temporarily increased. You can have a max of 10 stacks of Rush, and the action skill damage is plus 0.9% per stack consumed, and it lasts for 20 seconds. Fast Hands, another passive ability. Amara's reload speed, weapon swap speed, and mode switch speed are improved. Reload speed is up by 7%, weapon swap speed is up by 16%, and mode switch speed is also up by 16%. Violent Tapestry. Applying a status effect grants Amara a stack of Rush. Activating her action skill consumes all Rush stacks. For every stack of Rush consumed, Amara's status effect chance is temporarily increased. The effect chance goes up by 0.6% per stack consumed and lasts 20 seconds. And again, this is only the first rank of them. On our second line of abilities, we have Alacrity, Transcend, and Restless. Alacrity. Amara gains increased reload speed for every stack of Rush. After consuming Rush stacks, this bonus is increased for a few seconds. Reload speed for, again, the first rank, goes up by 0.4% per stack, 0.6% after action skill is used, and then a duration of 8 seconds. Transcend. Amara gains increased accuracy and critical hit damage for a few seconds after activating her action skill. The first rank will have an accuracy of plus 17%, critical hit damage of plus 9%, and duration of 12 seconds. Restless. Amara gains increased action skill cooldown rate, and that is up by 5%. And this over here is an action skill effect. As you can see in the top left, it'll tell you what that is. A portion of all damage dealt by Amara's action skill is returned to her or all nearby ally as health. And then Lifesteal, 30% of skill damage dealt. So that's going to be able to heal you and your teammates. Coming up to the third row, starting off on the left, this is a different action skill. It is called Deliverance. In the middle, another passive ability is Ascendant. And on the right, another action skill effect is Stillness of Mind. Starting with the action skill, Amara sends forward an astral projection of herself, dealing damage to everything in its path. Whenever Amara's astral projection damages an enemy or object, it releases homing elemental projectiles that trigger her action skill elemental effects on enemies. 28 seconds cooldown, 86 damage, 3 per enemy hit. The Ascendant passive ability. All action skill augments gain increased effects. Soul Sap Lifesteal is up by 20%. Allure Radius up by 100%. Glamour Duration 50%. Stillness of Mind breaks 0.75 seconds after being damaged. And Revelation damage up by 25%. Now this action skill, Stillness of Mind. Enemies damaged by Amara's action skill become phase locked until they are damaged or the duration ends. However, action skill cooldown is increased. If Amara targets an enemy with phase grasp, enemies near the grasped targets are phase locked. So you can actually phase lock multiple targets, it looks like, at the same time with phase grasp on. Starting off with the fourth row, we have an action skill, Reverberation, 3 passive skills from Rest, Laid Bare, and Wraith. Starting with the action skill, Reverberation, Amara sends forward an astral projection of herself, dealing damage to everything in its path. Again, you see this is what Mythical Assault is at the bottom. This is what all of these are, an astral projection. The astral projection deals increased damage for every enemy it hits. The cooldown is 30 seconds. Damage bonus is plus 50% per enemy hit and damage of 88. The passive ability from Rest, Amara gains improved fire rate and charge time, plus 4% fire rate and plus 21% charge time. The passive ability Laid Bare, enemies take increased damage from all sources for a few seconds after being damaged by Amara's action skill. Damage increased by 8.3% and 8-second duration. The passive ability Wraith, Amara gains increased gun damage. This effect is increased after she activates her action skill for a few seconds, plus 7% gun damage, plus 6.7% after action skill use gun damage, and 8-second duration. Onto our 5th line, we have 2 passive abilities and another action skill: Remnant, Awakening, and Tendava. Remnant passive ability: when Amara kills an enemy with a gun or action skill, she creates a homing projectile that seeks out a new enemy, dealing her action skill elemental damage. Any overkill damage is added to the projectile's damage, and the remnant damage is 9. Passive ability Awakening, Amara's rush stacks gain increased effectiveness by 10%. Tendava action skill, Amara sends forward an astral projection of herself. When it hits a target, it explodes, damaging all nearby enemies. Cooldown of 35 seconds, damage 91. And the very last 6th row passive ability, Avatar. Amara's action skill can be activated while it's cooling down. This skill may only be used once per completed cooldown. Additionally, increases Amara's max rush stacks. Additionally, if Amara's action skill kills an enemy, it refunds half of her rush stacks, plus 10 bonus rush stacks. Heading over to Fist of Elements. Our first and main action skill is Phase Grasp. Amara summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks the targeted enemy in place for a few seconds. Some enemies are immune to being grasped and instantly take damage instead. Skill duration is 7 seconds, a cooldown of 16 seconds, and grasp immune damage of 28. Our first row has 3 passive abilities: Anima, Steady Hands, and Infusion. Anima, Amara's status effects deal increased damage over time and have increased duration. Her action skill status effects deal further increased damage. Action skill status duration effect of plus 8%, status effect damage plus 4%, and status effect duration 20%. Steady Hands, Amara gains increased weapon handling and accuracy, plus 14% handling, plus 13% accuracy. Infusion, convert a portion of damage dealt by Amara's weapons into her action skill element, 8% converted damage. The second row, we have 3 passive abilities and an action skill element. First of 3 passive abilities is Tempest, Illuminated Fist, and Wildfire. Tempest, Amara deals increased elemental damage. Shock damage is further increased. Shock damage of 4, elemental damage of plus 6%. Illuminated Fist, Amara gains increased melee damage and her melee damage is converted to her action skill element, plus 75% melee damage. Wildfire, whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, it has a chance to spread to nearby enemy, spread chance of 8%. And the action skill element, Soulfire, converts Amara's action skill to incendiary damage. In the third row, we have an action skill effect, and a passive ability. The action skill is the Eternal Fist. Amara sends a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks the targeted enemy in place for a few seconds. Whenever the grasped enemy is killed, a new fist seeks out and grasps a new target. Bonus targets up to 4, cooldown of 20 seconds, and grasp immune damage of 28. Dread, the passive ability. Amara's gun damage is increased for a few seconds after an enemy is grasped. Whenever any player kills a grasped enemy, their current weapon is instantly reloaded. Gun damage of plus 15%, duration of 8 seconds. Allure, the action skill effect. Amara's action skill creates a singularity that pulls in enemies. Action skill damage of minus 20%, duration of 3 seconds. Our fourth row, we have 3 passive abilities and 1 action skill: Indiscriminate, Deep Well, Catharsis, and Ties That Bind. Indiscriminate, Amara's bullets that damage enemies have a chance to ricochet and deal decreased damage to other nearby enemies. Ricochet chance and damage are increased if the target is currently affected by Phase Grasp or Stillness of Mind. Ricochet chance of 10%, ricochet damage of minus 50%. Action skill ricochet chance of 20%, action skill ricochet damage of minus 25%. Deep Well, Amara gains increased magazine size with elemental weapons, magazine size of plus 20. Catharsis, whenever Amara triggers an elemental effect effect on an enemy. When that enemy dies, that enemy explodes, dealing her attuned elemental damage along with any other element that is currently inflicted upon the enemy. This skill has a short cooldown. Damage of 4, cooldown of 8 seconds. The action skill Ties That Bind. Amara summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks the targeted enemy in place for a few seconds. Enemies near the grasped target are linked, and any damage dealt to a linked target is shared between all other linked targets. Linked damage is 35% of damage dealt. Cooldown is 18 seconds, and grasp immune damage is 34. Onto the 5th row, we have an action skill and 2 passive abilities. Fist Over Matter, Sustainment, Conflux. The action skill Fist Over Matter, Amara summons a giant fist that bursts from the ground and locks the targeted enemies in place for a few seconds. After grasping that targeted enemy, large fists appear and constantly smash the area, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Cooldown of 28 seconds, damage 35, and grasp immune damage of 39. Passive ability Sustainment, Amara gains lifesteal whenever she deals elemental damage with her weapon, lifesteal of 4% of damage dealt. Conflux, whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains a chance to randomly electrocute, ignite, or melt that enemy, extra effect chance of 7%. And the final passive ability, Forceful Expressions, Amara's guns deal bonus elemental damage based on her action skill element. Bonus elemental damage is by 18% of damage dealt. Onto Brawl. The main action skill is Phase Slam. Amara leaps into the air and slams the ground, dealing damage to all nearby enemies and knocking them down. Cooldown of 35 seconds, damage of 98. The first 3 passive abilities we have are Root to Rise, Personal Space, and Clarity. Root to Rise, Amara gains increased max health. Personal Space, Amara's weapon shots deal bonus damage based on the distance to her targets. The closer the target, the greater the bonus. Bonus damage up to 12% of damage dealt. Clarity, Amara constantly regenerates health. The lower the health, the more powerful the regeneration. After using an action skill, this bonus is doubled for a few seconds. Health regeneration is up by 1%, missing health per second. Duration, 5 seconds. The second row, we have 3 passive abilities and 1 action skill element. Passive abilities are Arms Deal, Samsara, Helping Hands, and the action skill element is Blight Tiger. Arms Deal, Amara deals increased splash damage and takes reduced splash damage of plus 4% and splash damage reduction of plus 12%. Samsara, whenever Amara deals damage to an enemy with her action skill, she adds a stack of Samsara. For every stack of Samsara, Amara gains increased gun damage and health regeneration for a few seconds. Stacked DK after a few seconds. Gun damage is up by 1.7% per enemy damaged. Health regeneration of plus 1.7% of max health per second per stack. Max Samsara stacks of 5 and duration of 20 seconds. Helping Hands, for a few seconds after using her action skill, Amara's arms remain active and grant her damage reduction. Damage reduction of plus 12%, duration of 15 seconds. Action skill element Blight Tiger converts Amara's action skill to corrosive damage. Our third row, we have an action skill, 3 passive abilities, and an action skill effect. Our action skill Fracture, Amara summons a line of fists that erupt from the ground, dealing damage to enemies in front of Amara. Cooldown of 28 seconds, damage 88. Our 3 passive abilities, Mindfulness, Find Your Center, and Vigor. Mindfulness, whenever Amara takes damage, she gains a stack of Mindfulness. For every stack of Mindfulness, Amara gains improved shield regeneration delay and movement speed. Stacked DK after a few seconds. Shield regeneration delay of minus 9%. Movement speed of plus 1.4%. Max mindfulness stacks is 25 and duration of 5 seconds. Find Your Center. Amara gains increased melee damage. Additionally, for a few seconds after using her action skill, Amara gains increased melee range. Melee damage of plus 100%. Duration of 20 seconds. And melee range of plus 75%. Vigor. Kill skill. Killing an enemy with Amara's action skill grants all allies increased movement speed for a few seconds. Team movement speed of plus 3.3%, duration of 8 seconds. The action skill effect, Revelation. Amara's action skill now creates a Nova when it damages enemies, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. Action skill damage is minus 15% and Nova damage is 18. The fourth line, we have 1 action skill and 1 passive ability. Our action skill is Downfall. Amara leaps into the air and shoots an elemental beam below her briefly, followed by a slam. Cooldown of 47 37 seconds, damage of 95, and beam damage is 14 per second. Our passive ability is One with Nature. Amara gains increased max health and elemental damage resistance to her action skill element, max health of plus 5%, elemental damage reduction of plus 12%. Onto our next row, we have 3 passive abilities and 1 action skill effect. Our passive abilities are Do Unto Others, Jab Cross, and Guardian Angel, and our action skill effect is Glamour. Do Unto Others: whenever an enemy damages Amara, she automatically throws an energy orb back at them, dealing action skill elemental damage, cooldown of 8 seconds. Jab Cross: whenever Amara deals melee damage to an enemy, she gains increased action skill damage and increased gun damage for a few seconds. Gun damage of plus 3%, action skill damage of 15%, duration of 10 seconds. Guardian Angel: when Amara enters Fight for Your Life, she immediately gains a second wind, restores her health, and creates an action skill elemental nova that may knock back nearby enemies. This skill has a long cooldown. Max health restored of 100% of max health, cooldown of 120 seconds. The action skill effect Glamour: enemies damaged by Amara's action skill become confused and temporarily attack their allies. However, action skill cooldown is increased. If Amara targets an enemy with phase grasp, enemies near the grasp target are confused as well. Confused duration of 8 seconds, cooldown of plus 20%, damage minus 30. And our final passive ability is Blitz. Melee Override. Press V or whatever your button is on whatever your platform while aiming at an enemy to make Amara dash a short distance forward and perform a special melee strike dealing elemental melee damage. If a Blitz melee attack kills the enemy, Blitz cooldown is immediately reset. Cooldown of 8 seconds, melee damage of plus 100%. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We will be having videos again Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we stream on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Link is in the description. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and sub. I hope you guys really do like these videos. I'm trying to put more out lately. Have a great night. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.